Toward the end of the regular season, the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team played a series in Seattle, Washington, against the Mariners. One of the commentators at the time said, "The Blue Jays certainly travel well." It was his way of saying that the Jays have lots of fans in the stands even when they are playing on the road. The Seattle series was remarkable because it may have been that there were more Jays fans at the games than hometown Seattle could muster. And they were so loud that a perturbed pitcher could be seen to mouth, "This is my house," as he left the mound at the end of an inning. It was surprising just how much support there was for the Jays so far away from home. The Blue Jays had another good season, finishing in the Final Four of their sport. But this week, the Chicago Cubs won the ultimate prize. They won Major League Baseball's championship. The team had not won the World Series since 1908. Anyone here for that? No. It was sport's longest drought. At one point in this year's series, Chicago was down 3-1, one game away from elimination. It appeared that their 108 years of futility would continue for at least one more year. But the Cubs stretched the series against Cleveland to a full 7 games. They came back in extra innings to win Game 7. The author of the letter to the Hebrews wrote, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." Chicago fans had faith in their team that one day, even after 108 years of waiting, their team would be victorious. One fan in the stands carried a sign that said, "It's going to happen." He sported the sign at home games in Chicago and at road games in Cleveland during a far from predictable series. The final win came on the road in hostile territory. But a good contingent of Cubs fans was in Cleveland to see it happen. The fans continued to have faith in their team when good sense would have told them not to. By the way, I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. Once again, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. The author of Hebrews goes on to say, this is what the ancients were commended for. And he gives a who's who of faith-filled people from the Old Testament: Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Sarah. He implies we should reacquaint ourselves with their various stories of faith, perhaps even make their stories our own. All these people were still living by faith when they died, he said. They did not receive the things promised, they only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. Their faith was even greater than that of die-hard sports fans. In July of 1990, my wife and I traveled around Europe, visiting various friends. While there, we had an opportunity to visit the Canadian War Cemetery at Bergen-op-Zoom in the Netherlands. I wanted to go there because, as a young soldier myself, I had heard so much about the Battle of the Scheldt Estuary and the liberation of the Netherlands, of Canada's role during World War II, and, Riley's, you can close your ears, the Lincoln and Welland Regiment's role. When a group of veterans in Bergen-op-Zoom from the Bond van Woppenbroeder, the Dutch resistance, heard we were from Canada, they showered us with books and gifts. Canada certainly had fans in this faraway place. They were older men still keeping the faith after many years. On the way from the center of town to the cemetery, we feared that we were lost and hailed a passing cyclist. She assured us that we were on the right road and told us that she makes a daily pilgrimage to the Canadian cemetery. Approximately 1,300 Canadians have a resting place in that Dutch cemetery. And these young Canadians have a dedicated group of fans after all these years. They have been keeping the faith since 1945. I walked the entire Canadian cemetery and was struck by the number of graves whose stones read, "Known unto God." That means no one else but God knew who these guys were. They were unknown soldiers, and those words were etched where there might otherwise be an inscription from family members, and that bothered me. One grave caught my attention as I paused there. It was that of Private J.M. Davidson of the Lincoln and Welland Regiment. He had died on the 26th of January, 1945, at the age of 19 years. At the bottom of his stone was the message, "Asleep in a grave I may never see. May God guide someone to lay a flower for me." I imagined a grieving mother back in Canada sending out a plea for her son to do what she herself could not do, that her son might have a fan in that faraway place who would lay a flower for her. At first I thought, "Sorry, buddy, I didn't bring any flowers with me today." Then I noticed a bush fully in bloom with daisy-like flowers not that far away. So I picked one of those flowers and returned to the grave, where I laid it as per the request on the stone. Not until then did I notice a flower had been planted against the base of the stone's foundation. It was budding and ready to bloom. Private Davidson had at least one Dutch fan. It has been Canada's custom, up to Afghanistan, to bury our war dead and our peacekeeping dead in the land where they have fallen. Lieutenant William C. Houck is memorialized in this church. He fell on the 14th of December, 1944, at the age of 26. His final resting place is in Europe. Similarly, Carl O. Sauer is memorialized in this church. He fell on the 29th of September, 1944, at the age of 21 at Hoboken, Belgium. And Lieutenant Samuel Lewis Honey, Victoria Cross, Distinguished Conduct Medal, Military Medal, known as Uncle Lou to some in this church, fell in France at Boulogne Wood on the 2nd of October, 1918, at the age of 24, and is interred at Pas-de-Calais. Most of our war dead require fans in faraway places to remember them and tend their graves. And we too are tasked with keeping the faith. Ending his poem in the Flanders Fields, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae wrote, "Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields." Today we are the fans in a faraway place. Corporal Carrington of the 47th Lancashire Regiment of Foot came here from England. He died here, was laid to rest here, and never did return to his fans back home. We don't know what fans he left behind in England when he came here, but he has had fans here who took his remains into their care and buried them. He has had fans who remembered him as unknown, and yet twice a year marked his passing. His fans can now cheer for him by name and continue to keep the faith. Thanks be to God. Amen.